We're on.
Cool.
I spent a little bit of today writing the episode summaries for the previous episodes, and I was going back and like watching chunks of them. It's just like, what a bunch of shit talking going on.
Yeah.
Just normal convo.
Yeah.
But I think they go up next week.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
So we'll have all the way up through this episode, I believe, and then 3 webinars. So pretty jazzed. Hopefully it'll, be well received. We'll see. I'm sure people will point out the things that we said that they don't like. That's some shit I don't like.
I was having a very in-depth conversation with Cody about kind of all this stuff because he's pretty green in terms of putting the information that he's been exploring out into the world now. Meaning it's new to him and he's excited and he's got a bunch of stuff that he's doing and it's rad and whereas I've been kind of at this for like 20 years and I see social media very differently than he does right now, especially in the fact that it's like social media has created a place where people think they're going to get everything for free because they're getting information for free.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really taps into this thing of our psyche to where, I get DMs and emails from people who are literally asking me to do consult work for them for nothing, to solve problems for them for nothing. And I don't think there's a time it doesn't flabbergast me because I'm like, wow, like what like how do people think we earn a living?
They don't necessarily think about it, and I think that's the thing is people are ignorant to it. That's all it is. They don't really know. They don't really know how much work it takes to.
No, I don't think it's actually intentional. I think it's just reactionary.
Yeah, and it's like the other thing too is like people think that because we have some specific skill set that we have the answers to their problems.
Yeah.
And we don't. I was on a podcast the other day, and I feel like a jerk because I can't remember the exact name. I think it's like Estir Life podcast. That's what it is. And at the very end, the guy Sam, who's the host, was asking me like, what's the number one thing people can do? And I'd already given some very specific recommendations. He was like, so with all that said, what do you think people can do? And I was like, start. I'm like, the magic is actually in the practice. No matter what I tell you, or like you find so-and-so says, here's the remedy or da 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 da. Like you have to actually practice stuff. You have to go do it. Like you have to get out there. You have to take a risk in your practice. Like I'm going to try something and it might not work. And that's a part of the learning process. And it's kind of funny because this came up today. So because I can't help it, I'm going to bring up jiu-jitsu because it can't be helped. Right. But there's a guy one of the black belts who's a really good wrestler, grew up wrestling, from Iowa, wrestles. He can put it down on wrestling, and nobody wants to engage with this guy standing up. Like nobody wants to wrestle with him. Like, why would you miss the opportunity to wrestle somebody that good? Like you could learn so much, and he's a really good guy. Like he doesn't try to hurt people, or he's very responsible with the skill set that he has. I'm like, why wouldn't you want to engage with them? Like you could figure out where your weak spots are. You can see like, how does he set you up? And it's just such a good opportunity. The problem is like, you're going to get taken down and smashed for a little bit, but so what? Then you learn something, it's like, nobody wants to like engage with the guy where he's strong. It's like, I'm like, anytime I get a chance to roll with them, I'm like, hey, let's wrestle. Like, I want to wrestle with them and see what's it like. And, and I think it's the same thing happens when, with like people are afraid to make mistakes. Like oh man, I see this practice. Like, what if I do something wrong? I mean, unless you're on death's doorstep, like, why don't you just start? Just try it. Find something, try it. And, I'm not saying, hey, we don't need to give anybody any instruction. I'm just saying, give things a whirl.
I mean, I had this exact conversation with a guy who I mentor, who's he's in politics, so he helps politicians win. And yeah, I'm talking about stressful job, bro. um, you know, and we get into this place with our ego about perfection or winning or not getting exposed, right? And I think jujitsu is a great way for understanding that, because as a white belt, basically, you just basically get your that's it. But then it's
Yeah.
like as a blue belt, you're now winning, right? Like then as like a purple belt, it's like I don't really ever lose, like although you do, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like I don't want to.
Yeah.
It's like which is taking, and it's like the whole mentality of like most of the schools that I've seen is like development of competition, like the competition team, which just means the development of a winning team. That's what the focus of the entire school is. And it's like we're losing sight of the foundation of why we're here.
Yeah.
And that didn't say you shouldn't, like you can't win.
Right. Yeah. You can win. It's just like, when are you, I mean, I think Danaher put something out the other day. He has the winningest team in one of the winningest teams in all of jiu-jitsu right now. And he was like, hey, when you're on the mat and you're practicing with your training partners, put yourself in tight spots. He was using GSP as an example. And he was like, when GSP would come down and train in New York, he could like beat the brakes off of all of us if he started employing other skill sets he had. And he was like, he never did. He'd play the game, put himself in dangerous positions and figure out how to work his way out of it. He would expose himself. And he was like, and then, you know, you'd see him on fight night and he would take all that stuff that he had learned. He would go to the best boxers and get beat up boxing. He'd go to the best jiu-jitsu guys and get beat up doing jiu-jitsu. And then he'd go to the best wrestlers and they would wrestle the crap out of him. But then when it was time for him to go do what he did best, then he was in the competitive mindset. But these other places, he allowed himself to have his weaknesses exposed so that he had a stronger front when it mattered. And I think that's one of the things is like people just don't want to, they're scared to be exposed. And I think, some of that too is like having like some controlled opportunities for that to happen when you're young. Like it's embarrassing when that stuff happens, but if people are generous with you when you're having your moments of failure, then you're not as afraid of them, right? Because
Yeah.
something good ultimately came out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it really came down to my conversation with this guy was he's like, wow, what do you do like for discipline to do this practice? Because I procrastinate and push it off. And I'm like, well, that's what discipline is actually just having a time set or agreeing to do this no matter what. And, he was coming to me about another problem that was, you know, I was able to articulate. I was like, look, I can't navigate this for you. This is your navigating. Like this
Yeah.
is your thing. But I'll tell you right now that by you procrastinating about something and wanting to do it perfectly is just as telling as anything. So getting into a place to where this is the first thing you're doing in the morning so that you get to learn and be a kid with it, where the problem that you want to solve is going to show up and you're going to react to it. So this is the training for that moment when it pops up. And so if you can sit in those moments and work with the breathing and what you're dealing with, you can then start to explore why you're reacting or what you're trying to learn about in these other processes. And that's how I've found it works. And that was kind of the basis of the conversation, to where it's like, look, you got to be a kid again, man. You got to want to practice this stuff so that you can learn from it and default to it. So that when you're in those moments where you are reacting or are reactive, you then become responsive and reflective, instead of these, like, just, oh, like, I get upset about the way, something that happened, but then regret that I was upset about that and not understanding that, versus going, oh no, I'm upset right now for this reason. And I'm not going to react to this, even though it's hurt, like, I hurt inside about it. I'm going to learn more about why I hurt inside about this, and why it's not actually about maybe this situation. It's about something else. Right. So that's kind of the, where we were at. But I mean, I don't think it differentiates from wanting to avoid wrestling with with somebody who's world class. Right?
No,
Like,
it's not. It's the same thing. It's just wrestling with yourself,
yeah,
right? Like how can I engage with my own shit and get tripped up and fall down and kind of keep the 10,000-foot view of it's fine. Like, and here's the thing, it's gonna happen anyway. It's gonna happen, right? You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna have problems. You're gonna get frustrated. You're gonna find yourself in situations where you're uncomfortable or reactive. But the more you practice examining your reactions in those situations, then the easier it gets. The hard part is that sometimes you have to you got to swallow your pride and go, oh man, I sucked. I sucked
yeah,
right then. I didn't do a good job. Um, and that's on me. That was my fault. It's like earlier. This is a stupid and simple example, but earlier I like ran out of the house for a little while, left the dogs out, left the dogs running around the living room, and didn't let them out before I came back. Came back. I wasn't gone that long. Dog pissed on the chair. And I was like, it was just on the leg of a wooden chair. It wasn't like a big deal. It's just like one of the puppies raised his leg on the chair. And I was like, son of a bitch. And then I was like, well, he's a dog. Okay. Like, he's a dog. Like, he can't open the door. He has no other option. He had to piss. And I didn't give him an opportunity to go out there. It's just my fault because he doesn't choose to live in this environment. I chose that for him. So if I don't let him out and he pees on my stuff, that's my fault because they're good. Like, they know how to ask. They're not like um, untrained. And 99% of the time they ask, but I didn't give them an opportunity to. I was like, it'll be fine. And I went out of the house knowing that that was a potential outcome, and I came home and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. This is my fault. So I had nobody to be mad at. I was like, all right, guys, go outside. I gotta clean this shit up, you know?
yeah. And I mean, that's the funny thing, is people get like, I watch this. My parents. I watch this all the time with people with their animals. It's like, you know, we yell at our animals as though they're human beings and they understand what we're saying. For behaviors and things are that need a completely different mechanism for correcting, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just repeated over and over and over and over, right? And it's like, and then it's just this pattern.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just, I just get angry with the
I'm just
dog.
mad. This dog is dumb.
Yeah,
That's what you're right. This stupid dog. And Tommy told me the other day, she was like, these people were trying to get their dog just to sit. They were like, we're telling him sit. We're like, sit all the time. Sit, 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 sit. And she was like, well, did you ever teach him what sit is? Because he doesn't come with that knowledge, like hardwired in. That
yeah,
the word that you're saying means that. Like, he doesn't know. And he doesn't know because you didn't teach him. So you have to teach him what that means first, so that when you say it, he associates it with something. And I'm like, that's how everybody works. Like, you have to do that with human kids, right? They have to associate the language with the behavior you're asking for. So they was like, have you tried to teach your dog like what this actually is? And so they were like, well, no, da da da. And she taught their dog the behavior in, I think she said like 5 minutes. She just taught him like sit super easy, and then he just sat next to her for the rest of the appointment. And they were like, "How are you doing that? Like you're magic." And she was like, "No, I just taught him what the word meant, and I made him associate something good with the word, so now he wants to comply." She's like,
Yeah.
you have to understand how they work. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, we're on parallel paths, she and I, right now, with the way she's studying animal. She's studying animal behavior essentially, right? And we talk about human behavior all the time. Except most of the time we don't really talk about the fancy like gray matter stuff because people we're all so domineered by the lower brain. Most of our behavior is getting yanked around by our limbic system.
That's right. That's right, man. And it's no accident you two are in parallel universes right now.
No, it's helpful. It's cool to have animals as a mirror like that. Like
Yeah.
you can use them as a mirror that way. Because they don't have any way to benefit from your story. They
Yeah.
don't really care, you know. Like your dog, if you have a dog, it'll if you're Elon Musk, or if you're totally broke, your dog will take a shit in your living room without a second thought. you know? And so they have that kind of equality of reflection for everybody. Or like Ozzy Osbourne. You remember when Ozzy had the show? Did you ever watch that show?
Yeah, I did.
And his dogs were like shitting everywhere in his house. It was like
Yes.
he was just constantly picking shit up in his house, and he's like one of the most famous rock stars to ever exist. And this dude is just constantly picking up dog shit in his house. Like that dog doesn't care how many hit records he's had. It's just like
Yeah.
I gotta go, man, and you're not giving me another option.
How many records he actually has, which I don't know that anybody can count at this point.
No,
He's not doing real well.
nah. Well,
He's hurting.
those eggs
I
have been
mean, in a
those eggs.
financial I mean,
No,
like,
yeah, mentally.
yeah, health wise.
Yeah, well, he scrambled his eggs quite a bit early on,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I don't think you get to escape from that uh, untouched.
yep. It's uh, it's scary, man. I saw that guy, I don't know, 20 years ago on stage, just like bouncing around, crazy as can be. Like,
He's wild. I mean, Sabbath essentially invented heavy metal, right?
yeah,
Like that's where heavy metal came from is Sabbath, and yeah, you look at him back in the day, he's a fucking madman.
yeah, I was. Practice is important.
Yeah, it's funny though. Sometimes you wonder, like, oh, if that guy, if he had had a practice, or would that have changed? And it's like, maybe he didn't. Maybe it would have made him a lesser artist. I don't know. Like, is there a way to reconcile an even keel? Because it's like a lot of times those folks, their catharsis is all of that. And if you manage your emotions, you don't really need as much catharsis.
Yeah,
You know, I think then art comes from a different place. You know,
does
I think
does.
that's why. What was that? What was that documentary that Maynard did? Like it was like 10 years ago. It was like was it Blood into Wine? Is that what it's called?
Maybe
You never saw that? Where he was
I
talking about the
probably did.
vineyard.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, he said people, fans and stuff would ask him like, why did you guys change so much from like back in the day? And he was like, well, it was cathartic. Like if all my music's still angry, that means it didn't work.
That's right.
You know,
That's
like
right.
I moved on from those feelings. Like I let them out, I expressed myself, and I don't feel like that anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
Nah,
it's interesting.
it is. Things change, and if they don't, it's probably a problem.
Yeah, that's a clue. That's a clue, and it's not me, it's you. uh, yeah, and I think too, man. That's why I think last time we were talking about, maybe the last one or the podcast before, we were talking about the echo chamber and being in social media.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's good to have people, that you care about, who will tell you the truth about how you're behaving. You need, like, we all need that too.
Nobody's listening to that on social media,
We don't
right? Like
have to,
somebody,
because it's easy to find people who agree with what you're already doing.
yeah, or that set you off, and that just confirms the other side of things, right? Which is, now that's what journalism is as well. So I just, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. But I do think that, this whole thing with the pandemic has really exposed the communal aspect of things and really made it challenging. At least that's what I've noticed, especially in the last month or so. Like it's finally kind of like set in, like, yeah, this is definitely having an impact. I've got to be around more people. And how do I do that? And how do I do it safely? And, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. Because you need people, and you need good people around you who are willing to tell you the truth.
Yeah. And encourage you, like, one way or the other, right? The truth, one way or the other. Sometimes it's encouragement, like, hey man, you're doing awesome and I noticed. And sometimes it's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you gotta have people who will tell you both. You gotta have
Yeah.
people who will give you encouragement, or you know kick you the deal.
Yeah.
It can be tough, though. It can be tough to find those people. I think especially for folks who have done well and that people want something from. Like, the more you have that people want some piece of, then the more disingenuous people can become sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's all good. If you have a good practice and you got good people around you, you can spot it a mile away. You know.
Yeah. Where you learn some good lessons like I have.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, man. Setting boundaries.
It is setting boundaries.
And I'm not talking about the ones Brene Brown necessarily is talking about. Talking more about the internal ones and like gut feelings and like understanding that. And not that there's anything wrong with Brene's, because she's been pretty successful with that shit. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, there's something not right about this situation. What is that?
Yeah, I mean, internal boundaries, external boundaries, it's all important, and the ability to say no to yourself and to others
Yep.
are is really important. And what you eventually learn is that saying no to people is not about, like, the act of denying them necessarily, but it is about making space for myself, right? Because on the backside of that, you get resentment if you don't know how to say no,
Yeah.
right? Which is way more dangerous
Yes.
to everybody. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Learned plenty of hard lessons for that. Plenty.
but still, you got to engage,
Yeah.
right? Got to engage.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Cool. That's 30, man.
30 for 30. Not quite, but 30.
Yeah. We're actually at like 26, but it's all good.
That's all right.
We're gonna do another one in 3 days.
I know.
All right. Number 6.